Oh, good evening. Check this out, you guys. All right, you ready for this? I'm gonna breathe out. I'm gonna breathe in. This is a device that helps you measure your breathing. It's called the Voldine 5000 volumetric exerciser. All right, I'm gonna have more to say about that in a bit. My name is Dr. Asatar Bear. This is a class in heart rhythm meditation. If you're new to the class, welcome to you. Heart rhythm meditation is a kind of meditation that comes from Sufism. It's the mystical side of Islam. And the method is a very active style of meditation. You are working on really perfecting your breath, making your breath optimal. And what we mean by that is to make your breath at the same time deep, smooth, slow, rhythmic, full, and heart centered. So it's a lot of different parts to that. And, since I always start at the beginning every week, right? Every week there's somebody new. Um, then I don't really go through it step by step. So I'm just letting you guys know that's the whole part of the method. Okay, so you breathe in tune with your heartbeat, and this is a skill like anything else, right? It takes time to learn how to do it. Um, so I always like to start the class with just a little bit of practice, and then I'm going to talk about certain aspects of it and go deeper into it. So this class, I'm going to talk particularly about the full breath. Uh, so you guys can hear me, okay? Just turn up my volume. Um, okay, so we'll just do a couple of minutes to start off with, so you can get a flavor of this a little bit. All right, so first step, you want to be get your posture together. Sit up straight, a nice upright posture. If you're sitting in a chair, you want your knees to be at the same level or maybe a little bit lower than your hips. Feel like your head is suspended as if by a string from the top of your head there. And you want to pay attention to your breath, and you place your hand on your belly just to work on that deep aspect of breathing. So by deep, we mean diaphragmatic breathing or abdominal breathing. So that is when you breathe in, your belly expands, and when you breathe out, your belly contracts. If you don't feel your belly moving when you're breathing, then you're not breathing from your belly. You're not breathing deeply. The other way you can breathe is called thoracic breathing. That is breathing high in your chest. Um, we actually, when we do the full breath, heart rhythm meditation, we actually want to do both, but we want to have the breath begin in the belly and the belly expand and then keep on expanding up until the upper chest. All right. So normally when people are chest breathing, they're only doing that and the belly is kind of like locked in, right? So we want to just relax the belly, like we go through our day and whatever, we just keep ourselves so armored, right? We'll let that go. Let your belly just expand. Nobody's watching, right? This is everyone has their eyes closed. It's meditation class. So as you breathe in, you just relax the abdominal muscles and allow them to expand. And as you breathe out, you tighten the abdominal muscles and squeeze out the breath. And we also want to tune into our hearts, our emotional center, our spiritual center. So sometimes called the heart chakra, a center of feeling and emotion, but also a center of spirit and spiritual energy. So you can do that by just placing a hand right on your chest. You can keep the other one on your belly if you'd like. And as you breathe, feel that it is your heart that is breathing. Breathing in, you are taking in energy. And consider all of the ways that you take in energy throughout your day. You take in energy when you see something, you take in information when you listen to something, when you experience something. So all the time we're taking in energy, but only rarely are we aware of it. So meditation is that opportunity to just become aware of all that you're taking in as you breathe in. Or you may think of the impressions, and you might think of things that have happened during, the day, or some other day perhaps. And that's all part of it, right? That's your heart on a deep level, just processing and incorporating, assimilating what has happened, so you can assist that process just by becoming conscious of it. Now, in the exhalation, you are giving out energy. Like when you speak, you're expressing something. When you are giving out energy, then you are being active, right? So your breath shifts as you inhale, you're receiving, and as you exhale, you're giving or expressing. And this is what life is. Life is giving and receiving. Or by tuning into your breath, you become aware of that on a very fundamental level. Now, we also want to make our breath smooth, to make our breath, that means no pauses, no holding of the breath. We want it to flow like a river. So, if there is some part of your breath that feels constricted, if you might notice that you have a pattern of constricting your breath or holding your breath at certain times, something to become aware of. Now, if you can feel your heartbeat, then you bring your heartbeat into rhythm with your breath. Perhaps that means 4 beats on the inhalation and 4 beats on the exhalation, or perhaps it's 6 or 8. You choose the number, but this is a very good way of making your breath rhythmic and heart centered at the same time. And as you breathe, you might consider that all of life has a purpose. Every moment has a purpose that unfolds as we experience it. And maybe its purpose does not become clear until later. But it is your heart that knows what is truly important. And so by connecting to your heart, you connect to all that you feel is the most important in your life and outside of you as well. There's a world beyond each one of us, of course. All right, so we'll end our introductory practice there. So, a lot of meditation styles, like, as I talked about last week, the week before, a lot of styles of meditation are very passive. they focus a lot on just getting out of the way and relaxing and letting go and being in the now. All right. Um, and that's a certain approach. Okay. So, if meditation, like the state of meditation, the state of unity is like the mountaintop, right? Well, there's lots of different paths to get up to the mountaintop. All right. So one is not right and the other one is not wrong, you know? Um, but a path might be wrong for you or right. Another one might be better, I mean, so, um, if your path isn't working, you could take another one. Um, so the style of practice that we're doing right here is much more active, right? Now, that has pros and cons. Okay, the pro is it's much more powerful. It's much faster. Um, it's like a path up the mountain that's like it gets you right there. But it's going to be really steep. Right, that's the downside. Um, you're going to make a lot of progress in a quick amount of time. Um, but that has its own challenges, right? So, like, you're doing something that is very powerful. You're going to have a lot. There's going to be a lot of intensity to it. All right. So there's no judgment to this, right? Like if that's what you want and that speaks to you, like if you hear me say this and you're like, yes, all right, then okay, good, maybe that's for you, right? If you're like, whoa, I don't know about this, right? Well, maybe not. Um, I mean, that's the point of like offering this stuff in a format like this, right? I mean, traditionally meditation would never be taught like this, right? Traditionally, meditation was taught teacher to student, right? So that you always knew, like, who are you talking to and how are they receiving it, right? Um, and now it's different, right? Now all of the knowledge is out there, and it's more like, what are you going to do with it, right? All right, so um, that it's a different style of learning that we're doing now than was done in the past. Um, all right. So the key to like a active style, like the heart rhythm meditation, is to really develop the breath, right? And all of the aspects that I mentioned, right? Making the breath deep. Okay. So a little trick there, right? Just putting a hand on your belly, feeling is your belly moving, right? And this also just psychologically and physiologically connects you to yourself and to your body. Like when you take a hand and you put it somewhere on your, either on your belly or your chest, right? It's a soothing thing, right? So that's also part of it, right? I mean, like our problem is that we're constantly stressed, that our stress doesn't wear off. It's like with us all the time. So we need that soothing moment, right? And if you get that from meditation, that's great, right? It should do that, right? But to be honest, it's not always going to be soothing. Because meditation spurs growth, and growth is difficult. Let's be honest, like when you grow, that's not easy. That's difficult. Um, so, you want to have enough power in your practice to be able to get through like whatever comes up, right? Um, let's see here. All right. Sorry, I was checking on something on the chat there. Um, so the way to do this is to really develop the power of your breath. All right. And that's where this little thing comes in, this little device. All right. So this thing is, if you've ever like gone to the hospital for anything, um, they often will test you on one of these things, right? Because it's a non-invasive test. It's pretty simple to deliver, right? You just blow out all your breath, and then you suck into this as much as you can, right? And this thing is going to rise, right? And you try to hit your target. So there's mathematical calculations which determine what is your this is called vital capacity, which I think is a pretty nice term, right? Because vital means life, right? Vital capacity, life capacity. So this vital capacity is technically a portion of your total lung capacity. It's not the entire thing because not all of your lung capacity is under your voluntary control. There's a part of it that's not. So it's like vital capacity is like your total lung capacity minus that little portion that you can't control, right? So how does your breath work, right? Mechanically, well, the action of your muscles changes the shape of your thoracic cavity, right? And by doing that, by changing the shape of it, you create a partial vacuum in your lungs, right? And that is what draws the air in. Um, and then by muscular action, by squeezing these muscles, the intercostal muscles, abdominal muscles. There's a whole bunch of different, muscles basically from here down to your almost down to your hips, right? That control the that are involved in breathing or can be involved, right? Because breathing, there's a lot of different gradations to it, right? The breath can be very, very small, very slight, right? It can be totally unconscious, like when you're asleep, right? When you're asleep, you're not taking huge breaths, right? You're taking very small breaths, right? You're not using your whole lung capacity, not at all. Okay. So, one of the reasons that I suggest one of these things, and by the way, it's like $8. I put a link in the description. If you guys want to get one, I highly recommend it. It's a good thing to have. If anything, it's just a nice little toy. You put this on your coffee table, and somebody will say, "Wow, what's that?" Right? Or maybe they'll know. I don't know. Right. So the point of this thing is you do it and you try to hit your target. Like for me, it's like about 5 liters, or this is in milliliters, so it's like 5,000. It's kind of the top thing there. But whatever your target is, that has a little thing, and you can put that there, and then see if your white thing will hit it, right? All right. So now the point of this thing is so that you can see how much muscular effort does it take to like really take a full breath, right? To really access your whole lung capacity. It takes a fair amount of effort, right? And you might not be used to that, right? I mean, like all those muscles that can come into play in the breathing mechanism, well, you might not be doing them at the right time. They might not be used to doing that, right? So there's a certain aspect of just exercise, right? Like exercising your full breath. All right. Now, again, why would we want to do this? Well, here's a medical fact for you. All right. A medical fact. The reason that they put you on one of these things, that they test you on one of these when you go to the hospital, is because if your vital capacity goes down, like if you're not able to hit like your expected vital capacity, right? Like for me, again, 5,000. If I couldn't do that, they'd be worried, right? They'd be like, that's not good, right? Because your vital capacity going down is the precursor to a whole laundry list of negative medical outcomes, right? So, like, what's the point of doing this? To avoid all those negative health outcomes that I said, right? Like again, there's a reason why they test you on this thing, right? So when your vital capacity goes down, that's a negative sign for your health, period, right? And you can explore the details of this or whatever if you want. But this is not a class on medicine, so and I'm not going to get too much into it. Right. So that's one reason. It's good for your health to know how to be able to like fully breathe, right? Number one. Number two, we would like to develop our breath in meditation so that our breath is much fuller than it normally is. All right. So if we just sit quietly and breathe and pay no particular attention to our breath, then we'll probably be breathing at maybe somewhere between 2 and 10% of our vital capacity. All right, somewhere in there. I mean, it depends on the person and whatever else, right? It's by definition a little bit hard to measure, right? Because like your unconscious breath, you're unconscious of it, right? Like you're not paying attention to it. What's going on with it? We don't know, right? You don't know, you know. So that's one issue. We want to retrain the breath so that the breath is much bigger, much more powerful. All right. But we also want the breath to be very smooth and very subtle. All right. So, like, let me explain what I mean by this. Right. Breath that makes a lot of noise is not subtle. Right. Like if I'm going like, right. Those are big breaths. Those are bigger than normal breaths. But you hear the noise I'm making, right? I mean, that's not very meditative, right? I mean, that's not relaxing. That's not there's nothing subtle about that, right? And that kind of breathing, by the way, that's good for causing arousal, right? Physiological arousal. That is, if you breathe that way, it's going to raise your heart rate, it's going to raise your blood pressure, it's going to give you all of the it's going to raise your cortisol levels and all this stuff, right? All of the hormones and the signals that your body sends when you're under stress, right? Now, obviously, that's the exact opposite of what we want to do with meditation, right? I mean, like I said, our problem is that we're stressed. We want to de-stress. We want to be less stressed in the moment that we're meditating. And ideally, we'd like to get better at dealing with stress, right? So that things aren't as stressful, you know, so that stress trigger is not triggered, right? Um, so how do we do this, right? We want to breathe bigger because then you're taking in more energy, right? Breath is energy, and you're expressing more energy as you exhale, right? It gives you more power. It allows you to overcome whatever things come up in meditation, right? And things will come up. It doesn't take long. Um, if you haven't experienced that, fantastic. I hope you never do. I hope it's always easy. I just know that it won't be, um, and that's what makes meditation perhaps a more difficult skill than other things. I mean, there's lots of things you could be doing with your time, right? You could be playing a guitar, go for a run, or do martial arts, or right? All of these things have their obstacles, right? They all have the steps where you learn them, right? But meditation has a very special feature that other things don't have as much of, right? Which is that it pushes you to grow like very few other things, right? It pushes you to grow. And that's difficult. That's very difficult. So, and again, this is why traditionally you would have a teacher, right? Because your teacher can kind of monitor you, like how's it going? What's coming up, and how might we tune up your practice in order to help you deal with those things, right? Um, okay, so one of the things I want you guys to work on, as we practice this together, okay, different parts of making your breath optimal. All right, so deep, smooth, slow, rhythmic, right? Because here's the thing, right? Just like when I did the rapid breathing, right? That causes a stress reaction. When you do slow breathing, when you do rhythmic breathing, your heart-centered breathing, right? Deep breathing down in your abdominal region, this causes the relaxation effect, right? And you want that, right? I mean, you wouldn't want, like, if you sit down and meditate, like, oh my God, there's so much to do in life, right? Like I carved out the time. I took a few minutes for myself, and I'm going to just do some breathing. I'm going to relax, right? Well, what if you can't relax during that time, right? I mean, oh my God, that wouldn't be good, right? I mean, like, don't you want to breathe in such a way that you can quickly relax? Um, I mean, I do. I'll be honest, right? Like, I mean, ideally, I would never get stressed, right? That would be great. But that doesn't happen. That's not for me, right? I mean, that I get stressed like anybody else does, right? But what I like is to be able to take a few breaths and just shed it, right? So that's the point of doing all this with the breath, right? Making your breath physiologically optimal for you, right? So that you release that stress, and then you can go deeper, right? What are you here for with meditation, right? Remember, if you guys were here before, I talked about the different states that can happen: concentration, contemplation, meditation. These different spiritual states, right? Meditation is about experiencing the state of unity, right? But there's levels to that. Okay, so um, all right. Well, hopefully that motivates you a little bit. What I want to do now is practice a little bit because I talked a lot. So let's go back into meditation, meditative posture. All right. So sit up straight, feel your weight right over your sits bones, and your head is just right in line, your center line of your body. Tune into your breath. Feel that your heart is breathing. Feel the breath come in to your belly and expand. And just keep that expansion going. All right. So work on now making your breath fuller than before. Okay. When you're done breathing in, you breathe in a little bit more. And the key to this really is to breathe out more. Okay. We don't really ever breathe out all the way. And if you want to breathe more fully, you have to breathe out more than you're used to. And you do that by squeezing your abdominal muscles on the exhalation, and imagine that your stomach is being sucked in, like feel like your stomach is being pulled in, right, toward your spine. And when you inhale, your breath is going to want to rush in. Try to keep it under control, because remember, we want the breath also to be smooth. There's a wonderful metaphor here. The breath is a metaphor for how we live. And by breathing out all the way, it's like you are giving all that you have. And by the way, that is really the key to getting things done, right? Is to give 100%. How rarely do we do that? How rarely do we give everything we have? How rarely do we try our absolute hardest at anything? How rarely do we leave nothing left in the tank? And just in the simple action of breathing, we can actually practice that in a real way. And the reward for it is immediate, because by breathing out all the way, then you have the opportunity to breathe in all the way and to receive much more energy and much more inspiration, much more of that vital essence of life than you normally do. And we're also trying to keep the breath very slow, very smooth. It's a lot to focus on, I know. All right, we'll end our little practice session there. I hope you're getting something from this. If you have a question for me at any point, go ahead and let me know in the chat. Um, if you think of something later, feel free to message me. Um, all right. So again, the point of an active method like this is uh, to make your time that you have to meditate, to make that efficient. To make that. I know it sounds strange, but like, if you only have 5 or 10 minutes, or however much time you have, maybe it's 2 hours, right? I mean, if you only have a certain amount of time each day, uh, you want to make the most of it, right? Like you do of life in general. Um, oh, here we have a comment. Now I feel like continuing to breathe that way habitually. Yeah, that's right. That's good. I think you're getting it then. Um, it should feel good, like, yeah. uh, I've been emphasizing the difficulty of all this, but you're doing it right when it feels good. um, so we it's like, again, we want to raise the efficiency now. um, you know Let me just reemphasize, if this isn't what you know about meditation, that's okay. And if you have another style that you like doing, perfectly fine. Any kind of meditation is a lot better than nothing, right? So, I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to judge you. um, whatever you have that works for you, you should do. Um, but I just want to again emphasize, all the paths lead to the same mountaintop, right? So if you're doing a very passive style of meditation that maybe doesn't emphasize doing all this stuff to the breath. Um, you know, if you sit for long enough, your breath is going to get deep, right? So, all I'm saying is you could just make it deep right away, right? What? How? Well, focus on it, right? Put your hand on your belly. Like, is your belly moving? Well, if so, then you're abdominal breathing. So it's, if you sit for an hour and there's enough time so that your stress kind of has gone down some, right? You'll probably be breathing deeply by the end of that hour, right? And that's a traditional method of teaching meditation. Is like, hey, just sit here, and all that stuff that you're doing, all the bullshit that you're normally doing, you will eventually get tired of it if you sit long enough. So it's like, I don't even have to tell you anything. Just sit here, and a lot of that stuff will eventually melt away. Now, that's fine if you have the hour, right? If you have 10 minutes, you're never going to get there. Or you might not, right? Unless you Well, make your breath good then, right from the beginning, So pretend that you've already sat for an hour like that, right? Okay, so now if you breathe much more deeply, if you breathe more fully, um, you need to breathe more slowly in order to keep the proper balance. Okay, so and your blood has a certain balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. All right, and if that balance gets off, if that balance gets disrupted, um, it's not good, right? So normally, what we do is we breathe in a way that's arrhythmic, and that causes the CO2 level in your blood to actually be too low. Um, so if you breathe and you do this you arrhythmically, and then you start taking big breaths and whatever, you might feel like, and if you do it rapidly and arrhythmically, it's going to mess you up, right? It's going to make you lightheaded, it'll give you that head rush type of feeling. Okay, so I don't want you to just breathe bigger alone, right? I want you to also breathe slower. I want you to also breathe deeper, right? It all has to kind of come together, right? um, all right, I got another comment here. When I'm at work, I only remember to breathe like this when I step in the car to go home. Yeah, I feel you. I think to myself, how was I even breathing during work? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's common, right? A lot of times, we a lot of times we just forget, we forget because there's other things to do, and you can't be focused on your breathing all the time, right? Um, but hopefully you don't develop bad habits, right? I mean, and this is pretty common, like what happens when we get stressed? A lot of times we stop breathing, right? You hold the breath at some point, incredibly common. And this is not good for you, right? This is the kind of thing that messes up your blood, oxygen CO2 balance. Um, and this is called hypocapnia, in case if you're interested. So one of the things that you can do by retraining your breath in meditation is you just start to learn more about yourself, right? Like, oh, how do I respond to stress? Do I respond by holding my breath? I mean, that's actually very common. Do I respond by breathing shallowly and rapidly up in my chest? Also very common, right? How do you respond to stress on like a in a quiet level, right? Um, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on internally in your body? Um, all right. So another question: how does this fit with jogging? Yeah, jogging. I'm quite into running. Actually, I've run a lot of miles in my life. Um, so I was very interested in this, in doing this style of breathing along with running. Um, One of the nice things about running is that there's a built-in rhythm to it, right? Because your steps have a rhythm. So the question is like, what is the pattern of your breathing with your steps, right? Um, and you want there to be some kind of pattern. If there isn't a pattern, it's going to cause a problem. Um, so the this is a longer question than I can, I think, get into in this class, but you basically you want to make sure that your steps and your breathing are in the same rhythm. Okay, so you could do that with running. You can do that with walking as well. Now you're not going to be able to feel your heartbeat when you're walking or running, probably, right? Because there's just too much activity, right? There's too much muscular stuff going on with those activities for you to feel something as subtle as your heartbeat. So you don't use your heartbeat, you use the rhythm of your steps. All right. Um, so I like to use this method. Like if I'm walking someplace, I'm going to be putting my steps in rhythm with my breath. Right. Um, I'm not going to be able to feel my heartbeat, but that's good enough because then my breath will be in rhythm. Right. My breath will be slower. Depends on what rhythm you choose. If I'm walking at an ordinary pace, I usually like 8 steps in, 8 steps out. It's sort of similar to what I do when I'm just meditating, right? If I'm meditating, I'm not moving, so there's no steps, but I have the heartbeat, and so I keep the rhythm that way, right? But experiment with it, right? You try it out. This is all part of the learning process. So you're learning about breath. You try out, well, how many steps do I normally take? You know, um, the only thing you have to do there is pay attention, right? And then you'll see. Um, all right. Well, I hope you guys are feeling something about this breathing more, and that gives the experience something new, something different. That if you don't control the breath, that you don't necessarily get that. Um, all right. So I have if you guys have other questions, feel free to type them in. I got a few from people outside the class, so I want to address those. Um, One is meditation dangerous? And that's a big topic. um, the answer to that is anything that is powerful is dangerous, right? So it's like I don't want to say no to that, right? Because that wouldn't be honest. Is it dangerous? Yeah, it can be. hmm I mean, is driving in a car dangerous? Is taking an airplane dangerous? It's like, well, I mean, those things can be, right? Statistically, no, right? I mean, like you could fly in a lot of airplanes and never have a problem. Um, so it's a meditation is sort of like that. The, um, it is designed to cause growth. So what if you grow in a way that you don't understand, or in a way that scares you? Does that happen? Yeah. So if that's what you mean by dangerous, then yes, you know, it's dangerous to the status quo in that sense, right? Um, so, is it dangerous in some other way? Um, this is why meditation has traditionally been taught under the guidance of a teacher, right? Because, yeah, things can happen that you don't understand, and that can be difficult, right? And so, who is the teacher? Teacher is somebody who's been doing this for longer, who has maybe gone through some of this stuff. I mean, everybody's journey is different, but there's some common features, right? So, um, I'll say that for heart rhythm meditation in particular, there's a certain thing that goes along with it, right? Which is that you guys can see just by what we've done so far. This is a very active style, right? And like I said, it's like the steep path up the mountain, right? So it has all of the features of that, right? All of the difficulties of that, and also all of the kind of exhilaration of that, right? Like, I mean, if you make a lot of progress in your inner life and your inner understanding in a short period of time, I mean, that's fantastic, right? That's very, very compelling. So um, that's kind of my answer. I mean, I could say more about this. I actually wrote an entire little book about this topic, but maybe that's enough to address the question. All right, the next one is: do you need to believe certain things in order to meditate? Like how important is the philosophy or the religion or whatever? Um, you know, it's kind of like I've used a metaphor in the past of like martial arts or kung fu. Like kung fu comes out of a philosophical tradition in China, and it has a very detailed philosophy behind it. Do you need to know that in order to learn to punch somebody in the face? I mean, probably not. Like, it's like, okay, do these moves, right? Like this, right? Uh, I don't need to read a philosophy book for that, right? So, and do I need to believe in that stuff? I mean, uh, you could just try it out, right? Like, I don't want to tell you to believe a bunch of stuff if it's not necessary. Um, so my particular approach to this is like believe what you want, you know. Um, I'm not saying any of this stuff is a package deal, Like if a technique works for you, then do it, right? If you want to learn more about it, then of course there's a whole philosophy and a history and all this stuff, right? But do you need one to do the other? I don't know. I mean, my impulse is to say, do it, take with you as little as you need to, right? You know what I mean by that, right? Like, don't overpack. you know, um, you try it out, and if you're getting good results, then maybe learn more. But the techniques, I don't think require any belief whatsoever. It's like, do you need to have a philosophy in order to breathe in a certain way? I don't think you do. Um, all right. My next question here is will meditation make me spaced out? Um, I mean, that's kind of like our stereotype, right? Of like, if people are into meditation or whatever, are hippies or, like, whoa, they're spaced out. And, the first lesson of meditation is to concentrate, right? To focus your mind. And spacing out is not concentrating, right? Spacing out is allowing your mind to float freely. Um, yeah, there's some benefit to that, because we spend a lot of our time concentrating, and so allowing yourself to just space out can be nice, and you can get good ideas from doing that too, right? Um, but we want to just distinguish, right? If you're going to space out, right? If you're going to concentrate, concentrate. Don't don't. You want to be in control of it, right? That's the point. Um, I don't think meditation makes you spaced out, right? Meditation is exercise, first of all, in concentration, right? So I would say it's more like the opposite, right? Like, um, the people who are very good at meditation are universally excellent at concentrating, and you can kind of tell that if you ever hang out with somebody done a lot of meditation. They're going to be good at concentration. I mean, that's because that's the first step, right? That's the building block. All right, and another question I got is, what is mindfulness? So, mindfulness is a word that's kind of become synonymous with meditation in a lot of ways, um, because it is the term that is often used for a particular Buddhist practice, which is called vipassana, um, or also called insight meditation. Um, and, this is a style of meditation that a lot of people know because there's a lot of people out there who teach it and have written about it and so on. Um, it's a style of meditation that has been shorn away from its Buddhist monastic roots. You're not, most people who practice the vipassana or mindfulness are not necessarily studying in a Buddhist monastery or something, right? Um, because they have the understanding that this is, I mean, like I said, right, that you don't necessarily need a whole detailed philosophy. You don't need to be part of a certain religion to practice this mindfulness, right? Um, so I will say that mindfulness is a very different style of practice than heart rhythm meditation, right? Vipassana or mindfulness is much more on the passive side, right? Um, Now there's some variation in that because it's taught differently by different people who emphasize different things. There's not necessarily just one thing called that, right? Every person who teaches anything, whether they teach, boxing or painting or meditation or whatever, is going to put their own stamp on it, right? Their own personality on it. So that's kind of one answer, right? Mindfulness is a style of meditation or a kind of meditation, but it's also a generic term which means concentration. Like when somebody says, "Be mindful of something," right? Or use some mindfulness as you approach blah blah blah, right? They mean pay attention, right? Focus, don't space out, right? So mindfulness is like all those things, right? It means concentrate. It means be aware. Now, normally within that practice, you are practicing awareness, but with a certain style. Okay, you're becoming aware of things, but you're not holding on to them, right? You are letting them go or allowing them to be without having to change them, right? So that's a certain philosophy that comes out of, right? Um, and again, the Sufi style of meditation that I'm teaching you guys is different from that. Um, is much more active. So you can adopt that same style to it, right? Like whatever comes up in your meditation is interesting and is also something that is going to pass, right? Is not a permanent thing. Is something that you can experience and appreciate and allow it to pass on to the next thing, right? That's because you're in a constant process of flow here. All right, so um, let's have one more quick practice session here. Those of you who are still with me, let's focus, take a few more breaths, sit up straight again, and focus your attention on your breath. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Breathing deeply, breathing slowly, breathing rhythmically, and breathing fully, feeling that your heart is breathing. Those are all the elements of breath that we're working on. And try to breathe out a little bit more. Squeeze the abdominal muscles. Squeeze out all the breath. And breathe in and allow your belly and your chest to expand. Take in much more energy and inspiration, more of life's essence. All right. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. Now, if you're really interested in learning this method step by step, you might want to check out my Patreon page, which I've just released. It's a new thing. Want to support my work. You also get access to a whole course in this, which takes you through it step by step. Um, in this class, I mean, you guys are free to come to it. Of course, I'm going to have this every week, but I can only do so much because I'm always starting over, right? So that's different from a progressive course that is like, I know you've gone through these steps, right? So I have such a course like that I make available to all my patrons, and I put a link in the description if you guys are interested. So thanks again for joining me. It's nice to be with you all, and I'll see you next week, I suppose. All right, take care.